What is going on, Misfits? Good to see you again. Welcome back to another edition of Logician Tim Learns with me, your host, Logician Tim. That's right. This is the show where you get to watch me go from a total gaming newbie to a more informed gaming newbie. How about that? What is up, Jay? Good to see you in the chat. Good to see you, my dude. If you don't know, I am streaming in 4 different places. I'm on Facebook, my personal page. I'm in the Facebook group called Misfits of Tabletop. So be sure to check that out. I'm on Twitch and I'm on YouTube. So, hello everybody. Hello and welcome. We're back working on some more of, where is my show and tell? There we go. Some more of this Numenera. So we're getting close to the end on this one. This is the one we're going to be going over tonight is the GM guide. And this is where we're going to learn all about the tips and tricks that they kind of teach us in here. And yes, we're going to go over some more of that GM intrusion that I was, I'm still on the fence about a little bit, but we're going to go a little bit further into depth about that. So yeah, stay tuned for that. But let's kind of dive in here and see what's going on. We're way back towards the end of the book now. And guys, this book is huge. It's huge. Like 400 and something pages. It's crazy. So where are we at? We're at page 309. Let me get back here. 309, running the game. Let me get this framed up for you. What is up, Misty? Good to see you. Hello, hello. So yeah, the GM guide, they're really adamant about making sure people know this game is about the story, okay? The story is the most important part of Numenera. And they tell us that the rules are really there just to support the story and not the other way around. And so the role-playing, or actually role-playing the mechanics through the story is what you want to focus on, okay? So you want to role-play through, through the storytelling, through your dice rolls, right? And they kind of give us some examples, and some of the ones that I've been kind of thinking of. What's up, Joe and Angela? Good to see you on Facebook. Good to see you. Hello. Sure, like if you're doing 5 damage with, a melee, if you're hitting somebody for 5 damage, the second round and the third round are exactly like the first, right? You're doing 5 damage. But what happens with the story, right? You should be thinking along the lines of, okay, well, the first round, I uppercut him and hit him right in the jaw, snapping his head back. The second round, I roundhouse kicked him right in the gut and he bent over in pain. And both of these are that same, 5 damage attack, but it's kind of described in a narrative fashion. And so you really want to keep this in mind, especially those of you that are new to RPGs like me, when you're handling your rolls, to be sure to add narrative to each roll. Okay, it's not just, hey, I did 5 damage, right? A bear or a cliff to climb or a lock to pick, they all might have this difficulty of 5 or whatever, and they all require the exact same dice and dice rolls to overcome, right? So they're exactly the same roll that you're going to make for fighting a bear might be the same roll that you make for a cliff. They have the same difficulty, right? But the story that you tell with each one is going to be very different from one another, and each is going to have its own its own unique drama kind of mixed in, right? So, I don't know, if you're fighting a bear, you might say, after getting knocked off balance from the bear's attacks, I regain my footing and swing my axe at the bear's neck, slicing a deep wound. That's a whole lot better than saying I did 5 damage to the bear, right? I mean, that pushes forth the story. And that's really what one of the big tips that they talk about in here is using the dice to not just say I did 5 damage, but you're using it to further and tell a story, right? A descriptive story. And so be creative every time that the dice is rolled, and just don't fall into that monotony of just reading numbers on the dice and saying, okay, you succeeded, right? That sucks. GMing and role-playing games is about adding flavor and really bringing those dice rolls to life through narrative, okay? So I just want to kind of run through there because I thought that was a kind of a good tip. I mean, I think it pretty much is self-explanatory, but I think it kind of needs to be said, especially for the new people out there that don't have a lot of role-playing experience. I think it's easy just to look at the dice and go, did I succeed? Did I fail? And just keep rolling. And that's a dice game, right? That's not a role-playing game. And so it's important. You have to put effort in to make it a role-playing game, right? And so, so just kind of remembering to do that every time that you roll a dice, that you're telling a story of what's happening, right? Then the book kind of moves on to kind of GM tips, some of them being like setting the proper difficulty ratings for your rolls, right? And so when you're setting the difficulty of a task, it's important really to kind of remain objective and consistent. So if you're picking a lock, for example, or if your players are going to be picking a lock, and it would be hard for an average person that doesn't have any skill, then follow kind of like the guidelines that they give us on the little chart. Where are all those charts, Tim? Here they are. So they have like the chart from 0 to 10 difficulty, right? So 0 being routine, requiring no dice roll, to 10 being impossible, which if that would require a 30 on a D20 dice, which is literally impossible to make, right? Then follow the recommendations here, right? So, and they're kind of set on the average person. So if it's going to be hard for an average person, if you're picking this lock, then go with a difficulty rating of 4, which is difficult, right? So your players might end up having like lock picking skills or other things they can do to ease the difficulty, kind of lowering it from 4 down to 3 or even 2 or a lot lower, but the rating still remains the same. So I shouldn't make the difficulty of the lock, 8 all of a sudden, because I know, Scott or Jay has a lock picking skill and I really want to make this one a little bit more difficult on them. No, what I should do is keep the level 4. And if you have the skill, then you can bring that down. Okay. So, cause this is going to let the players use their skills and abilities to overcome that difficulty. And it makes them feel empowered and helps you stay consistent when you're making difficulties, right? And that consistency is really key. If your players, need to activate some device, to gain access to an area, and the difficulty is 4, all right? And then the next day they come back to that same device and they try to activate it again, and all of a sudden it's a difficulty of 7. It's going to confuse the players, right? I mean, you can do that, but you really need to have a good reason why all of a sudden it's harder now. I don't know, maybe the device is shorting out or making the odds of success kind of vary depending on when you pull the lever or something. I don't know, but come up with a reason, right? And because this type of thing should really be the exception rather than the norm, because your players really want to be able to see some sort of logic and reason and expectation in the difficulty levels that you set, so that they can have some sense really of what to expect when they encounter similar things in the future. That makes sense. If you want to cross a road, basically, like you've done thousands of times before, you're kind of relying on this past experiences, right? Waiting, you see a car down the road, you think you got plenty of time, and so you can cross the road safely. But if every time you step foot on the road, even after looking both ways, you were randomly run over with kind of no way of knowing like how or why I got ran over, you'd probably stop trying to cross the road at some point, right? At least I hope you would. And the same is true of your players. So if the difficulty levels, aren't somehow or somewhat consistent from attempt to attempt over periods of time, then it becomes too random and illogical, and that really breaks the immersion for your players. And they'll start to think, okay, well, this doesn't make sense. Why was this device a 4 yesterday and now it's an 8, right? And with no explanation, that's just really bad to do. So just a good tip there to keep those difficulty levels, logical, meaning the level of them, logical to the average person. That's how you're going to do your rating, not based on your character's ability. Because I think I would get stuck in that. Like I would think, Jay's got the lock picking skill, so I'm going to make this really hard for him. No, I really want to make it, okay, this lock pick would be 4 if, somebody with no skill did it. And that's really the way that you want to think about it. And that'll help you stay consistent. Now, the book also goes over what they call impossible difficulties. And so if you have a difficulty level of 7, 8, 9, or even 10, then they're technically impossible, requiring you to roll the values of 21, 24, 27, and 30 to achieve. And so you can't roll over a 20 on a D20, right, Tim? No, you can't. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't have them in the game, because characters have tons of ways to reduce the difficulty of the task, especially as they gain more abilities and, you know, ranks in their tiers, and they use effort and things like that. So, for example, if somebody was facing a difficulty of 7, which would be 21 on a 20-sided dice. Okay, so you got to get a 21 on a 20-sided dice. You can't do it, right? But you can spend effort points. Remember that, where you can lower your one of your stats by 3 points to lower the difficulty by one level, right? So all of a sudden that 21 that you need becomes an 18 that you need on the dice. And so that all of a sudden it's possible, right? It's not likely, but it's possible. Now, if you're specialized in a skill or use more effort points or get help from someone, then you can easily lower it to, like, say, a difficulty of 4, which is a 12 that you would need on the dice, right? Or even lower. So if something is supposed to be nearly impossible, let the difficulty level reflect that, even if at first glance it seems too high to even attempt. Kind of be true on your difficulty levels, and let the players try to figure out if they can do it or not, right? If they want to, spend that effort, if they want to do all the things they have to do to lower that difficulty and make it possible. They might not, but that empowers your players, right? Next, the book kind of talks about being perfect, like me. Because I'm totally perfect. I never mess up, ever. You can ask Misty and Jay. I never mess up. I just don't make mistakes. That's how it is. If you watch my streams more than 3 minutes, you know that's a lie, because I make mistakes constantly, right? And Scott and Jay's favorite phrase is, "You had one job, Timbo. You had one job," because I mess up everything. And honestly, I'm okay with making mistakes. It means that I'm trying things and I'm constantly learning and adapting. And really the same goes with making mistakes as a GM. It's okay. It really is. It's going to happen, and it's probably going to happen a lot. Okay. And sometimes your players, sometimes your players might break down a door or something, and all of a sudden you realize, okay, I rated this difficulty way too easy for my players. That's no reason to fret. Don't worry. Okay. Because maybe the door was, you can always make up, hey, maybe the door was already weakened by an earthquake, or maybe the hinges were rusted on the other side of the door that you couldn't see or something. Mistakes are really easy to cover up in RPGs with just a little bit of effort, kind of like a on the fly story, or maybe just telling the players, hey, I messed up. That was supposed to be a lot harder than it was. And honestly, I seriously doubt that they're going to throw anything at you. I really don't. If they do decide to throw something at you, you just duck behind the GM screen. Right? I mean, that's what those things are for, right? So that you can hide behind. I mean, that's what I would use them for, because I'm sure things are going to be thrown at me all the time. So Jay says on Facebook, says, unless you had one job, right? And Joe says, it means you're human, I think. Yeah, I think. So yeah, you're going to mess up. And, sometimes you can just hide it with a little bit of story. Sometimes you just say, hey, man, I messed up. Deal with it. That's what it is. But, most of the time the players aren't going to even know that you messed up. And really the important thing here is to not let the fear of making a mistake kind of keep you from making a quick decision on a difficulty level, or really anything else for that matter. I mean, taking too much time to decide, what difficulty level this lock should be, or flipping through your book looking for some mechanic or something, that's going to hurt the game a lot more than if you were to make it a little bit too hard or too easy on the players. I mean, just really make a decision and stick with it and get on with the game. And you're going to get better as you go, and the flow of the game won't be hindered by something stupid, right? And so I think that's important, just to kind of keep it going. I don't trust robots. Yeah, I agree, Joe. I agree. I don't think I'm a robot. I'll just say that. I mean, I don't think I am, but I could be. I could be a really poorly programmed robot. It's definitely in the realm of possibility. But I don't think I am. So yeah, don't be afraid to mess up. And I think that you can't say that enough, especially for new players and new GMs. You're going to mess up, and it's okay. And you can recover from this, and you can tell people, hey, I messed up, or you can just cover it up, and that's fine too. And just don't be afraid to, don't get don't get that analysis paralysis where you're like, I don't want to make a mistake. Let me make sure this difficulty level is 4 and not 5. And you got to flip back in the book and waste like 3 minutes of time when it really is not going to make that big of a difference, right? Your players just want to play the game. They don't care if you get it exactly right most of the time. So, and now they kind of get to, so I really like that section on making mistakes, that it's okay to make mistakes. And it's right there in the rule book. So if anybody says otherwise, you can say, hey, it's in the rules. It's right here. It says it's okay. So there you go. And then they kind of get into the dreaded, I don't know, dreaded or not, but the GM intrusion. So this is really the third time that they go over GM intrusion in the book. And this time they actually gave me some meat to chew on. Okay. And I'm going to hold my judgment, and final opinions for the report card that's going to happen on Friday. If you've missed the other streams that where I went over GM intrusions, they're basically where the GM can intrude or intervene and make a complication for the character, right? And in return, the GM's going to give that character 2 experience points, one of which they have to immediately give away to another character and explain the reason for doing so. I don't know. Hey, you helped me up this cliff earlier, or I don't know, you're good looking. I don't know, whatever you're going to say, right? But you're going to give them 1 EXP point. You're going to keep 1. And the player so you have to either accept that that complication or whatever, or you actually have the option to refuse it if you have experience points. And so how you refuse it, if you just say, no, fam, I'm not gonna let that happen right now. I don't want your GM intrusion on me, bro. Instead of me getting those experience points, I'm going to spend one of my own experience points to not let that happen. Okay. If I don't have any experience points, then I can't refuse it. I just have to go with the flow. So I don't know. But before, when they mentioned GM intrusion, they use the example of dropping your sword during combat. All right, hey, I know you're trying to swing at this guy, but I'm going to GM intrude here. I'm going to give you 2 experience points, one of which you have to give away, and you just dropped your sword on the ground. All right, thanks. All right, that just seems cheesy to me, to be honest, right? But this time around, they gave me some better examples, and here's how GM intrusion might work as described in the GM guide, and it's a little bit better, more palatable, I guess, for me. So here's what they say. The players find a hidden console with some buttons. Okay, so you find some console with some buttons. You finally learn the right order to press the buttons, and a section of the floor disappears all of a sudden, right? Now, as the GM, you don't ask the players where they're standing, and instead, you give the player 1 experience points, actually 2, because he's got to give 1 away. And you say, unfortunately, you're standing directly over this new hole in the floor, all right? Now, the player at that point could, if they wanted to, they could refuse this thing happening, right? And they could refuse my experience that I was going to give them, and instead spend 1 experience of their own. And they could say, you know what, I'll leap to the side to safety, last second. Most likely, though, they say that the player is going to accept the intrusion and take your experience points. And then the GM really has 2 different ways that they can handle this intrusion. So one way that you can handle it is you can say, you're standing in the wrong place, so you need to make a roll, right? The floor is falling out beneath you. You need to make a roll. And this is going to give the player an opportunity, at least, to try to escape. Or secondly, they can go, hey, you're standing in the wrong place. The floor opens underneath your feet and you fall down into the darkness, right? The player has no way to defend themselves, and they have to accept their fate of falling down in this pit. So, and they kind of say which one you pick is really up to you. It's kind of up to the situation, the characters, and really asking the question, which one will add more to the story at that moment. So, that's a couple of new ways that you can use GM intrusion. They kind of also talk about using GM intrusion as a narrative tool as well. And I didn't think about this before, but this kind of makes a little bit of sense. So let me give you an example of what they're talking about. Let's say you have this like really cool adventure plot, plot point set out in this village, right? And maybe you have to talk to this one villager, right? And the characters are in this village. You finally got them to this village, and they're going to uncover this awesome plot point that's going to take them off this awesome quest, right? But the players decide, you know what? I'm out. Like, let's just take off. And they're chasing squirrels or something, right? And so they don't stay in the village long enough to even talk to the character that you want them to talk to. So they take off. Well, you can make it that so you can do a GM intrusion right outside the village a few minutes later that, I don't know, like a poisonous snake, slides out of the grass and bites somebody on the leg. And it requires this, rare anti-venom to cure or something. So, just have it be where something that the players wouldn't have on hand, and that might end up pushing them back to the village in seek of help, right? And so if you get them back to the village, there you'll have another opportunity at engaging the players in your adventure, right? So the book tells us that you really shouldn't use GM intrusion as a railroading tool. So you don't want to railroad your players into doing something, but more of a rudder that can sometimes help kind of steer the group in the right direction. Now, they can still choose to say, you know what, screw it, I don't care, man, we're dragging them along poisoned. Or they might go somewhere else and look for anti-venom. Or they might have a cipher that you forgot about that cures poison, and you're SOL at that point. But that's okay. But you still gave them the opportunity. You used the GM intrusion as an opportunity to steer them in the direction that you kind of wanted them to go, right? And they kind of go into giving a lot of examples about how to use GM intrusions. Everything from bad luck, like the floorboard beneath the floor beneath the player gives away, to the boat lists starboard at the wrong moment and you fall overboard, or maybe the buckle of somebody's backpack comes undone at the wrong time, or those type of things. They kind of give a whole bunch of them. So anyways, it makes a little bit more palatable for me, other than just you just dropped your sword. It sounded so cheesy to me, and they used that example twice in the book. So I was glad to see that it can be more in depth than that, and you can use it as a tool to help kind of steer the players when you want to, and add a little bit more drama, especially to roles that difficulties that would be trivial, something that would be trivial that they wouldn't have to normally roll on, and you could throw in a GM intrusion at that point and either have them roll or have something else happen, some complication happen to really add a little bit more intensity and drama to that scene, right? So, yeah, I kind of get it. I think I kind of see what they're going for here. Like I said, I'm going to really think about it tonight and tomorrow, and then when I get my final report card on Friday on Numenera, then we'll see. I'll give my final thoughts on it. Now, the GM section is huge. Okay, it's ginormous. It's probably, what is it? 309. I mean, it's a good 360, or it's a good 60 pages or 50 pages or so. And then you have the adventures in the back. So like your sample campaign stuff like that back there. But one of the things I liked is, let me get to this page real quick. One of the things I really liked is when they started talking about running your first session, your first few sessions of Numenera, and they kind of give us some tips. And so I kind of cherry picked this out of here because I enjoy reading the newbie stuff. I like knowing, what do I need to know running this game from a first time, or for a new GM, or even a new player, I think can benefit from reading some of these things in here. And honestly, sometimes you can get, some old players can get a couple nuggets of wisdom out of here, So I always enjoy reading the stuff that's kind of aimed towards the new player or the new GM. And that's exactly what they give us here. They talk about running your first few sessions and kind of running them a little bit differently, and just a few tips to kind of get you started, and a couple of them that are really specifically related just to Numenera. And the book says that that the players aren't going to get the terminology and all the jargon right at the beginning. And they said instead what they're going to be using the terminology and the jargon of the last game that they played, right? And that's okay, that's fine. But the GM should try to get it right, because the players are going to follow the GM's lead. They're going to follow your lead. So like when I say character type, and then I say just like class, they say character type in this book, and I always say like character class. Well, I say that a lot, and if I'm running this game, people saying, okay, what's your class? Then, you kind of correct them to go, yeah, it's character type. My character type is, yada, yada, yada. And so if you keep using that terminology over and over again, people are going to start falling into that habit and following those leads, right? And I think that it's important for the GM to do the same. And after a session or two, they're going to start getting the jargon and start getting the terminology right. They're going to adapt, right? And so yeah, if the GM's always calling things by the wrong name or using D&D terms when they're not D&D terms, then the players are going to follow the same suit, right? And so just be sure to use the terminology that's in the game that you're playing, and people will eventually pick up on it most of the time. And then it kind of tells us that each time you use a new term, for example, like in this game, the term damage track or GM intrusion or difficulty level, explain what that means, right? Don't just assume that they've read the book and they've done their studies and they remember and retain that information. Make sure everybody's on the same page, even with the basic stuff. And I would say especially with the basics. So yeah, just the first few times you mention stuff, go ahead and explain, a difficulty level is this, difficulty level of 2 is, means you have to roll 3 times that amount, which is 6, right? And the best way to help, because new players really won't know, what's easy and what's hard when they start off, because they don't have this frame of reference, or really they don't understand what difficulty is. Yeah, they understand the numbers, but they haven't really played with that, right? So because really part of Numenera is knowing when to use your effort, right? When to spend those stat points and when to use your effort to ease difficulty levels and when to conserve it. And new players just aren't going to know how to do this. They're not going to have any practice at this. And I said the best way to really help with this is to give them some guidance, kind of early on. Don't be overbearing, but give them some guidance and, tell them the difficulty level and tell them that the target number that they're going to have to roll, right? So the difficulty of 2, meaning you're going to have to roll a 6 or better, right? So you're going to do that each time before they attempt an action, just until they kind of get the hang of it, and remind them, hey, that you can use effort, if you want to ease the difficulty, and kind of explain how that works. You're going to lower your stat pool by 3 temporarily to ease the level by 1. Right. And so you're going to remind them to do that. So, but it says in here, and I thought it was kind of funny, that typically new players to Numenera, they actually overuse effort, and they use it right at the beginning when everything's really easy. And they really suck down those stat point pools, really low at the very beginning. And it says really go ahead and prepare for this, because your players are going to have to rest a lot. And so you're just going to have to kind of plan that in there. All right, yeah, you rested, you got your stat pools back, whatever. And so go ahead and plan for that in the beginning, that the players are going to overuse their effort pool, and they're going to have to rest. Just at least until they kind of learn how to manage their stat pools, their effort, and their resting and all that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, the book kind of then goes on to give a lot of information and tips about, really creating stories for your players, everything from pacing to describing actions, describing the weird world that is the Numenera world, right? And breathing life into the scenes through like really small details and stuff. They give a lot of information in here. It's a really well thought out and very content rich GM guide. I really wasn't expecting to have all this much content that they have. One of the things that I thought was really awesome in here that I haven't seen before to this extent is they give an example of Numenera in play in the form of a script. They took 4 whole pages of the book and scripted it out almost like a play, where you have the game master saying something, then Bruce, the player, GM says something else, then Diana says something, and then the GM says something, then Clark, then Diana, then Bruce, and they kind of go through this entire script. And I just think that's awesome that they give us an example of how the game, might play out. And for someone that's new to RPGs or someone new to Numenera, I think this can really help set the expectations of what is involved before playing. And I personally absolutely love to hit my microphone. I love this idea. I love it. I think it's great. To me, like, I have anxiety about everything. Like, I think, like, overthink way too much. And so when I think about GMing a game, you know, for the first time, I have tons of anxiety, and just being able to see how this might play out gives me this frame of reference in my head, and just kind of eases that anxiety, and allows me to be a lot more confident in my abilities of being able to run a game for my friends. And I think that's just really cool that they threw that in there, and they just give this great example. Just lovely idea. Love it, love it, love it. So, in the book, there's also like a huge section on the different Numenera, the different, you know, devices and stuff that you're going to find. Bestiary. There's several adventures in here for the GM to kind of pick through and play, which, you know, I love that. I've said that many times, that I love when they give us some starting campaigns or adventures to start off with, and don't just throw me out there and go, hey, now just make you a campaign. I'm like, well, hell, I don't even know where to start, right? Give me something to start with, and that gives me some frame of reference when I'm creating my own. So I love it when they do that. But yeah, the book is huge. It's great, full of tons and tons of art. The bestiary is fantastic. The Numenera section has so many items you won't know what to do with. And again, I think they said it in the GM guide. They said it earlier too, but one of the things that is that's important to note when you're doing this. What's up, Eddie? Good to see you, my dude, over on Facebook. Good to see you, man. But one of the things they say is they talk about, you know, spending ciphers. And so I think each character type can only have X amount of ciphers on them at one time because of the radiation and stuff. If you have too many at one point, or too many in one spot, then you're going to get like radiation and stuff. Well, so I don't know if you had 5 slots for them. I don't remember how many there were, but if you have 5 slots, then the GM really should be allowing the players to find or get rewarded or something to collect 5 new Numenera each game, 5 new ciphers, because you really want to encourage them to use these things in their combat, because they're one-use items. You use them and they're done. And so you really want to encourage them to use these things and discard them and get something else, get something new, right? So that they're always going through these things. They're always using these cool abilities and feeling powerful and discovering new things. Because Numenera is all about discovery, and especially discovering these new awesome devices and what they can do. I just think it's a really cool plot line. So, but anyways, that's about it for me tonight. That's it for the GM guide. And like I said earlier, we'll be going over the report card for Numenera on Friday on live stream, same bat time, same bat channel at 5 o'clock on Friday. God willing, I'll be here. So anyways, that's it for me tonight. If you're on YouTube, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe, please. I'll get it out. Goodness. If you're on Twitch, go ahead and hit that heart button up top. You can follow me there. If you haven't done so yet, if you're on Twitch or Facebook, or if you're on Twitch or YouTube, or rather, go ahead and join the Facebook page. It's called Misfits of Tabletop. It's not a page, it's a group, really. It's an awesome group, too. It's what, like 1,700 plus people now. We share awesome art. We bust each other's balls. We have a good time in there. We talk about games and all types of cool stuff. So, yeah, go ahead and join the Misfits of Tabletop Facebook group. It's free to do so, man. Just join it. If you don't like it, leave. That's cool, man. But yeah, follow me on Twitch and subscribe on YouTube. If you have any questions, throw them down in the comments. I did get a couple comments on my YouTube page since last time. Thank you so much for that. I love it when people just say hello or just drop a thought on there. It just really encourages me. So that's it for me tonight, you all. And we will see you all on Friday with the Numenera report card. All right. Bye.